discover the unnerving intimate traditions of old China. Centuries ago, life was steeped in customs that now seem haunting. From bound feet to ghost marriages, these practices shaped lives and fates. Let's delve into the eerie and often unsettling world of ancient Chinese traditions. Ready? Let's begin. Number 1. Foot binding, a crippling display of beauty. Foot binding began when girls were as young as 5. Their toes were forcefully bent under the sole of the foot, and the arch was broken to create a distinct and unnaturally tiny shape. This gruesome process involved tightly wrapping the feet with cloth, causing excruciating pain and often leading to severe infections. The bound feet, known as lotus feet, became a symbol of beauty and high status, ensuring that the girl would be more desirable for marriage within the elite circles. However, the consequences of foot binding were severe and long-lasting. Women with bound feet could barely walk and were dependent on others for most of their lives. This dependence was seen as a virtue, as it kept women confined to their homes and away from public life, reinforcing their subservient role in society. Though foot binding was officially banned in the early 20th century, its painful legacy lingered for generations, as many women continued to live with the deformities and limitations caused by this cruel practice. Number 2. Arranged marriages, duty over desire. In traditional Chinese society, marriage was more about strategic alliances than romantic love. Parents arranged marriages for their children, often based on considerations such as family status, wealth, and the potential for producing male heirs. These unions were typically decided when the children were very young, and the bride and groom might not meet until their wedding day, creating a tense and often awkward initial interaction. While some couples eventually developed affection and companionship, many marriages remained devoid of personal fulfillment. The primary focus was on fulfilling family obligations and continuing the lineage. The individual desires and happiness of the bride and groom were secondary to the needs of their respective families. This practice emphasized duty and sacrifice over personal choice, reflecting the deeply rooted Confucian values that prioritize family harmony and social order. Number 3. The concubine system, a hierarchy of wives. In ancient China, wealthy men often took multiple concubines in addition to their legal wives. Concubines were usually chosen for their beauty and their ability to bear sons. While they lived in the same household as the wife, their social status was significantly lower. The wife held authority over the concubines, but this power dynamic led to intense jealousy and competition within the household. The lives of concubines were fraught with uncertainty and insecurity. Their status depended largely on their ability to produce male heirs, and their favor with the man of the house could fluctuate wildly. This system created a complex and often hostile environment, where women were pitted against each other in a perpetual struggle for recognition and security. The practice underscored the deeply patriarchal nature of society, where women's worth was primarily measured by their reproductive capabilities and their subservience to male authority. Number 4. The ghost marriage. Our union beyond the grave. Ghost marriages were arranged to appease the spirits of unmarried deceased individuals, ensuring their happiness in the afterlife. Families would prepare a paper effigy of a spouse for the deceased and bury it alongside them. This practice was believed to prevent misfortune and ensure the deceased would not be lonely in the afterlife. Ghost marriages reflected the strong belief in filial piety and the importance of maintaining family harmony even beyond death. The practice also underscored the deep-seated fears surrounding the supernatural and the afterlife. Families believed that the spirits of unmarried individuals might cause trouble if they were not properly appeased. By arranging ghost marriages, they sought to placate these restless spirits and secure their own peace and prosperity. Though rare today, ghost marriages highlight the lengths to which traditional Chinese society went to honor their ancestors and uphold their cultural values. Number 5. The practice of levirate marriage, carrying on the lineage. Levirate marriage was a practice where a widow was expected to marry her deceased husband's younger brother. This ensured the continuation of the family line and provided a male heir to carry on the family name. The widow often had little choice in the matter, despite potentially still mourning the loss of her first husband. This tradition reflected the immense pressure placed on women to uphold family lineage and the subordinate role they played in family decision-making. The practice of levirate marriage also highlighted the pragmatic approach to marriage in traditional Chinese society. The focus was on preserving family honor and ensuring the survival of the family name rather than the personal happiness of the individuals involved. Over time, social reforms in the 20th century led to the decline of this practice, as attitudes towards marriage and women's rights began to evolve. Number 6. The sending away ceremony. A daughter's painful farewell. The sending away ceremony marked the emotional departure of a daughter from her birth family as she married and joined her husband's household. This ceremony involved the bride saying a tearful goodbye to her parents and the home where she grew up. It symbolized her transition to a new life dedicated to her husband's family, highlighting the patriarchal structure of society where women were seen as transferring their loyalty from their birth family to their husband's family. The emotional strain of this transition was often palpable, with the bride and her family wailing and lamenting the separation. This ritual underscored the profound sense of loss felt by both the bride and her parents, as she left behind everything familiar to start a new life in a different household. The ceremony served as a stark reminder of the societal expectations placed on women to prioritize their husband's family over their own, reinforcing their subordinate position within the traditional family structure. Number 7. The practice of foot concubinage. A bizarre beauty standard. Foot concubinage was an unusual and disturbing practice where men with foot fetishes sought out concubines with bound feet so small that they could be carried in a sleeve or pocket. These foot concubines were valued solely for their deformed feet, which were considered a mark of extreme beauty and status. This practice highlighted the lengths to which some individuals would go to conform to bizarre and harmful beauty standards. The treatment of foot concubines was dehumanizing, as they were often seen more as objects of desire than as human beings. The extreme fetishization of their bound feet underscored the objectification and exploitation of women within this practice. While foot concubinage was not widespread and did not represent mainstream ideals, it revealed the darker side of societal beauty standards and the ways in which they could warp human relationships and individual dignity. Number 8. The mourning rituals. A period of public display. Mourning rituals in traditional China were elaborate and lengthy, involving public displays of grief and respect for the deceased. Upon the death of a spouse or parent, the bereaved were expected to wear coarse clothing, wail loudly, and abstain from certain activities for a set period. These rituals varied in intensity based on social class, but they all served to publicly demonstrate the mourner's devotion and respect for the deceased. Some extreme mourning practices included self-inflicted injuries and abstaining from bathing, reflecting the depth of the mourner's grief and their commitment to honoring the deceased. Over time, such practices were discouraged, but the emphasis on public displays of mourning remained. These rituals highlighted the importance placed on filial piety and the collective expression of loss, reinforcing the social expectations surrounding death and the proper way to honor one's ancestors. Number 9. The practice of sati. A wife's ultimate sacrifice not widespread in China. While sati was more prevalent in India, there were rare instances in China where a widow would sacrifice herself on her husband's funeral pyre. This act was seen as the ultimate display of devotion and loyalty, signifying the wife's willingness to join her husband in death. However, it was often a coerced act, driven by societal pressure and the fear of dishonoring the family. The practice of sati was condemned by Confucian scholars and eventually faded away, but its existence highlighted the extreme expectations placed on women to demonstrate their loyalty and subservience. The act of self-immolation was a tragic and dramatic expression of the patriarchal values that dominated traditional society, where a woman's worth was often tied to her husband's status and her willingness to sacrifice herself for his honor. Number 10. The tradition of secondary burial, a final resting place. Secondary burial involved placing bodies in temporary locations for several years before exhuming the bones, cleaning them, and placing them in a permanent tomb. This practice was believed to allow the body to decompose properly and ensure a peaceful afterlife. The process reflected the meticulous care and attention given to funeral rites and the importance of honoring the deceased in the afterlife. The tradition of secondary burial underscored the belief in the afterlife and the need to provide proper care for the dead to ensure their well-being in the next world. It also highlighted the reverence for ancestors and the elaborate rituals involved in maintaining familial and spiritual harmony. Although less common today, secondary burial practices illustrate the deep cultural significance of funeral rites and the enduring respect for the deceased within traditional Chinese society. And that's it from this video. See you in the next one.